I want to check something real quick.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I gotta shut off my YouTube real quick. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm recording on our the audio part for the podcast separately. All right, let me take off here. So share that on YouTube. I sent it to you, and I'm gonna share it on Facebook. I'm gonna share mine.
Okay.
And then we'll.
Join us on Geek Blurb, the show you can't ignore. Wayne and Kevin diving deep into all things cool. Comic book, movie, sci-fi, and action thrill. Reviewing new TV shows, we keep it real. Reminiscing the attitude era, wrestling at its peak. Nostalgia from the 80s and 90s, memories we seek. Pineapples for our rings, a unique touch. Geek culture in our blood, we love it so much. Geek Blurb, we love it so much. Geek Blurb, where we talk about it all, from superheroes to wrestlers. We stand tall, Ray and Kevin, the dynamic duo in sight. Geek Blurb, shining bright, shining bright. Did you hear about Pluto? That's messed up, right? Geek Blurb, taking you on a nostalgia flight. From movies to TV, we cover it all. Join us and every week we'll have a ball. Shuffle.
Bopping.
What's going on, my friend?
Not much.
Nice.
Been a couple of weeks.
It has been.
Great to be back.
Take some time off. Busy
Got
summer.
a lot to talk about. Busy
Yes, we
summer
do.
indeed. We're gonna start off with our very first live show and tell.
Want me to go first? What's up?
I'm guessing you didn't hear any of that.
No.
Yeah, for some reason I have to work on getting the audio, but it'll work on the podcast form. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, the intro to Show and Tell, which we play on the
Yes.
podcast. Go first, and then I'll go.
Sounds good. A few weeks ago, I got Batman One Bad
Ooh.
Day comic series, all the point of view
Holy
from the
smokes.
villain. Unfortunately, the Joker one is just the Killing Joke, but there's stories in there by Tom King and a bunch of others. So,
Nice.
pretty hefty book, display case, bunch of books in it. So I look forward to reading that once I have time in September.
Awesome. Well, I've been telling you I've wanted this for a very, very long time. Never had it as a kid, and you know I've been collecting older games. Started recently going with Mario and Zelda. But this game is one that was always, for some reason, never owned it, never really even wanted it until I got older. And then when I wanted it, the price went up astronomically. But I did find some great deals, and I will tell you the case is a reproduction. However, I did get Superman Death and Return of Superman on Genesis.
Nice.
The case and the manual are reproductions because those themselves, with the whole entire set, are over $200. So I was like, nope. Cartridges authentic, but everything else I don't care about if it's authentic or not.
Right.
It still
It's cool to
looks
have.
like it looks cool. The colors are crisp, so it'll look great on my shelf. It'll look great in the system because the game is authentic. That's all I cared about. So,
Nice.
yeah, part of my collection finally. This is the same company that made the Maximum Carnage and the Spider-Man games and Separation Anxiety. Same game, so it's the same type of side scroller, but with Superman, and then you get to play against all the different Supermen of that era.
Oh, nice.
Superman died with Doomsday, and Doomsday is the villain, of course. So it's really cool. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up this week. So let's talk about what we watched this week. There was a lot of stuff. The big thing was the finale for House of Dragons last week. How was your feeling on, first of all, the finale, and then the whole entire series as a whole?
I enjoyed the season as a whole. The finale felt like episode 8 of a 10-episode season, which I had an issue with. Like, if this was going into, like, 2 more episodes, it would have been fucking outstanding. But they shorted us a couple episodes this season. But overall, the episode itself was good. It being the finale was the issue with me.
It was a setup. It was a setup for next season, where usually an episode like this, you're right, would have been 1 or 2 episodes before a finale.
Yes.
But yeah, the big thing about this episode, like every season finale of Game of Thrones since I think the last season of Game of Thrones leaked online. A lot of clips of this episode leaked, I think Monday before the episode aired on Twitter and wherever. But didn't really matter because the episode didn't have a lot of stuff to be leaked as far as like big huge plot points, because there wasn't really anything. The big thing was Rhaenyra. Well, we'll talk about episode 7 too, because we did talk about that. Episode 7, Rhaenyra called for an army of bastards. And we all know that she was, everybody who's been watching knows that has all these dragons that don't have riders.
Yep.
And she doesn't have enough Targaryens to ride them. So she's going through the records to try to find people with Targaryen blood to ride these dragons, and she does find some bastards to ride them.
Yep.
The first one that's found is well, this is the episode before was the smoke. What's that smoke one?
Sea Smoke.
Sea
Sea
Smoke
finding the dragon rider. Yep.
Yep. And the beginning of that episode is where she finds that rider. I can't remember. He's one of the members of the I can't remember names of this show, but
yeah, it's confusing.
It's confusing. But they're all these lowbrow, poor, low-born dragon riders are all looked and frowned upon by Rhaenyra's council, including her son, who's the prince. And they end up finding Ulf and Hugh Hammer, and they end up mounting Silverwing and Vermithor by the end of this episode. And they also mention another Hightower brother in Old Town, and he's taking the dragon. And I know that has some implications going forward, maybe.
Yep. And as far as these two go, Ulf, I do not remember from the book, but I do remember Hugh Hammer from the books.
Okay.
Ulf might be made up for the show. Not sure. It's been a few years since I read the book, so.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm glad that scene was awesome when they both found the dragon. And then it just showed Ulf like just having the time of his life, and of course he grew up poor and whatnot, and everyone else is like this royal, which you see in the last episode, where he's disrespecting the prince, kind of, but he doesn't know he's doing that. So yeah. Yep.
Then we get into episode 8, season 2 finale. The very beginning shows Aemon has burned Sharp Point. Don't know anything about where Sharp Point is. I know it was singeing at this point. And we also learned that Helena has a dragon that's named Dreamfire. I looked a little bit into that. Dragon looks cool. I know that doesn't play much in the books. I think she rides around King's Landing a little bit in the books. She's not really a fighter with it.
Yep.
But we also see another futuristic vision from Daemon. We're going to talk about this a little bit because there's some big, huge reveals in this. It's almost very futuristic.
Yes.
Very, very much foreboding what's going to happen to him and what's going to happen later on.
To the whole
200 years
yes.
later, yeah. We see a vision of the White Walkers. We see a vision of Khaleesi, Daenerys, hatching the 3 dragon eggs from 200 years later. We see Rhaenyra's on the Iron Throne. And we hear that all familiar winter is coming again.
Yeah.
We heard it in the first season too with Viserys too. But we also see one of the ravens. Remember in Game of Thrones, what was that guy? What was the kid's name?
Raven?
One of the Starks. Yeah, the three-eyed raven. Brandon
Stark. Yes.
And we also see one here that's known as the Blood Raven. Do you know anything about this? I saw a little blurb.
That was the raven in the tree when Bran took over. The old dude from, I think it was actually in Star Wars Episode 7. I forget the actor's name, but he's like a really famous actor. But yeah, he was that would be his 3-eyed raven. He was around for like 150 years.
Okay. So yeah, there's little bit of thing going
Martin
on with that.
Sandow, I think is his name, the actor's name. He was in Episode 7.
And the other thing in this episode, right before the visions start, there's this tree, this very magical tree in the woods, and there's almost like this wood-like creature with antlers, and you can hear the hooves going on the ground. And supposedly these are called the Green Men. Do you know anything about this?
I do not.
Okay, so other than that, that's all we know about. We see, like we said, we do see a White Walker, but this White Walker is not the leader from Game of Thrones. This one has long, blonde hair. There's a speculation, which I had no idea till this week, that at the end of this, that could be Daemon. Daemon could be turning into a White Walker. Have you heard that theory at all?
I don't think that's going to be a thing, but I mean,
well, not right. Like,
I mean,
I heard that
it certainly isn't in the books, and I don't think that's going to be a thing. But maybe, like in the future, maybe if they go past the show, Daemon is a White Walker, or he was maybe the Night King or something like that. Who knows? But in this show, I don't see it happening at all.
Okay. We also see in this episode that Alicent has sold King's Landing completely down the river, along with Aegon, which is fucking crazy. And she just flees pretty much. Another dragon comes into play. Aegon flees, and pretty much the episode, like you said, ends with major battles looming. People are getting ready to fight, so I'm guessing by the beginning, in 2 years, by the beginning of the next season, we're going to be seeing some major battles happening. And right before this aired, it was announced that there was going to end with season 4. And it won't start production until 2025 for season 3.
Which is what I told you when you asked me, I think 2 weeks ago, you asked me how long it's going to go, and I said probably 4 seasons. Doubt they stretch it out much more than that. I think they're going to cut out a lot of the fat from the books and just focus mainly on the main story, because there was a lot of fat in the books.
Okay. So yeah, that's our talk for House of Dragons, and we'll talk about that again in another 2 fucking years. And I watched Dexter.
Finally, you finally fucking watched it.
Finally, season 8, and I also watched New Blood. Right? Yeah, New Blood's the name of it. We're gonna talk about it. The end of season 7, LaGuardia, she was killed by Deb. This picks up 6 months later. The aftermath of that, they actually pick up at a ceremony of her being with a bench and near the water. They're doing a ceremony there. Batista, which I kind of figured was reverse his retirement. He's a police officer again. Quinn and his sister are dating now. Deb has quit the Miami Metro. She's working as a bounty hunter / PI. And she gets in a coke-up sex bender with the guy Billy Walsh from Entourage.
I knew you would like that.
Yep. And Sean Patrick Flannery from Boondock Saints is her boss throughout this whole entire season. Dr. Fogel, a new character created for this season. She ends up working for Miami Metro. And come to find out, she and Harry created the code. She knows all about Dexter. She knows all about everything in his childhood. And they have a whole interaction throughout this whole entire season. It's all about them. And Deborah also in this season confesses to Quinn of everything. Quinn doesn't really believe her. And as she's going into the interrogation room, Dexter goes in and interferes and grabs her. And that was a close tension call again. But that doctor, Dr. Fogel, also takes in Deb, tries to figure out her father issues, tries to get over everything that's going on with Dexter, which is highly impossible. You also learn that Masuka is a sperm donor.
Yes. His daughter is
he has a daughter
in Friday Night Lights, which is when I first saw her.
Okay.
She was like kind of a crush of mine back in the day because she's cute.
Okay. Deb tries to kill Dexter. They go in a car and they go into a river or some sort of body of water. Ends up saving him, has regrets, and ultimately saves him. Dexter ends up taking on a protege serial killer who ends up being killed by the big bad in this season.
Yep.
Hannah, who's on the lam, returns to Miami, being hunted by Deb's old PI boss for the reward money. He has hired a marshal. Dexter and Hannah decide to flee together with Harrison to Argentina. He quits the Miami Metro, and there's a few episodes of him saying goodbye to everybody. Deb ends up going back to Miami Metro after she kind of figures her shit out. And the big bad of this was the brain surgeon. In the beginning, he's cutting off skulls, taking pieces of brains, and sending them to this Dr. Fogel. Come to find out, he's the son of Dr. Fogel, the long-lost son who she thought died when he was younger and burned in a fire. His name is Saxton. He ends up killing Dexter's protege. He ends up killing Dr. Fogel. And the killer gets caught by Dexter, but Dexter ends up letting him loose. So Deb can get the bus of the century, and he ends up breaking out. He ends up killing the marshal that's following him, and Deb ends up shooting Deborah to escape. And Saxton sneaks into the hospital because Deb goes to the hospital to try to kill Deb to finish it. And just as Dexter goes to stop him and tries to kill him with a fork, Batista goes to Saxton and puts a gun to his head and arrests him. In the hospital, the whole entire end of this series is weird. And you've been warning me for a while this is going to happen. But Deb has a stroke. She becomes brain dead. Dexter ends up killing Saxton, makes it look like self-defense in the interrogation room at the police station. And Dexter goes back to the hospital because there's an impending hurricane happening in Miami at the time. And he unplugs Deb from all of her life stuff in the hospital and drives into the hurricane in his boat. And he tells Hannah to take Harrison with her to Argentina. He's not going to meet up with her pretty much.
Yep.
And makes you think that Hannah's going to raise Harrison all by herself.
Yes, it does.
And then like I said, Dexter goes in, drops Deb into the water with all of his bodies that he's strewn throughout the Miami harbor for all these years. And the boat goes into the hurricane, and the next thing you see, it's in a whole bunch of pieces. So you figure, well, Dexter died in the hurricane. That sucks. And then you get a flash forward to Dexter with a long beard in a lumber yard in the north.
In fucking Oregon.
Alone.
Where all serial killers go.
Yep. And he does that so all the people that he loves will never be hurt by his actions again.
Yes.
Now, I wrote this before I watched Dexter's New Blood. Now, where could this season have gone? Would it have been what would have been a universally satisfying ending? I think what they did in New Blood, if that had happened now, it wouldn't have worked as well. But the last episode of New Blood, which we're going to get into in a few minutes, when there is some awesome shit that happened that I wished had happened in Miami Metro. Like, I wish we would have seen Mazuka's and Quinn's reaction and Batista's reaction, which we do get in New Blood, which is a little awesome. I wish we could have got their reaction to find out that Dexter is a fucking serial killer. We never got that. With Batista back, the one thing with Batista back, we didn't see the search for the Huerta's killer. I think that would have been a great part of this season if that had been it, and then they found out later that it was Dexter.
Yep.
And then Dexter could have been on the run. Could have had a showdown with Miami Metro. It could have been very much like Breaking Bad.
I just wish at some point we got him on the run. Especially
right, and we didn't have any of it.
How well it was done in Breaking Bad. But
like by the time we get to New Blood, everybody thinks he's right. And then we get 10 years later, we get to New Blood. Everybody thinks Dexter is dead. He died in the hurricane.
Yeah.
And he is living in a town in upstate New York, and
I love
the whole entire
setting. Love the
setting. Like
so
the whole entire series of Dexter. Dexter's dark passenger is Henry, his father, or Harry. And this after he left Miami, he kind of lost that. He stopped killing. He worked at a sporting goods store selling guns. He lived in a log cabin in the woods all by himself. He knew everybody in town, of course, small town.
Yep.
And when he starts killing, his dark passenger now, or his passenger, because he hasn't really killed, is Deb. She comes back, his sister, after she's been dead for 10 years. She's in his head talking to him. But the very first episode, 10 years later, his son Harrison ends up finding him in New York. And he's been hiding for a decade with Hannah. Hannah died 3 years ago of cancer, so he had nowhere to go. He's been through a lot of shit, and he blames a lot of it on Dexter, rightfully so, for leaving him.
Yep.
And Dexter has his first kill in 10 years, awakening his inner monologue, and that happened in the Dexter season, one of those seasons too, where it opened his inner monologue.
Yep.
It's just awesome when he starts talking to himself, because you're so used to that through all the seasons of Dexter. This season, the big bad was Clancy Brown. We've seen him in a lot of things. We talk about him, how great he is and everything.
Yep.
But Batista cameos in this, and I saw one episode. I was like, God damn, I'm so glad they brought Batista back, because I think him, and like you mentioned, I think Quinn towards the end were two of my favorite characters, and Mazuka, of course. Mazuka was my favorite comedy relief of that series. The first,
he's awesome.
But Harrison remembers Trinity's last kill. Dexter was always worried he was going to be born out of blood, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. He has a lot of anger issues, a lot of pent up killing rage. He ends up going to the high school in this town after he moves in with Dexter, and he ends up stabbing one of the kids there because he finds a knife, and he's reading all about Trinity and how he killed his mother on one of these podcasts. And Lithgow actually cameoed in this too. I didn't realize that he was going to be in there. In a little quick scene, they de-aged him. And Dexter confides in Harrison with his vigilante shit, as he calls it, by the end of this season, and he's kind of telling him that he's capturing these people but not killing him, because Deb's in his head. It's like, don't tell him you killed them. It's going to turn him forever. It's going to be changing him forever. But by the end, he actually does tell him that I didn't just capture him. I did kill these people. And he's like, how many did you kill? And he's like, hundreds.
Yep.
It's like, holy shit. Dexter's girlfriend, who happens to be the police chief of this little small lake town village. I thought she was great in this. I can't remember what I've seen her. I can't remember what I've seen her. Twilight. There we go. There we go. She became a better police officer in one season of New Blood than the entire Miami Metro Police Department.
The thing is, they set that up in the very first season of Dexter, where only 20% of the homicides are solved in Miami, so it's a great place for him to work. Up here, there's nothing. Like it'd be like somebody committing a crime in York, Maine. Like that'd be the crime. Like,
but Clancy Brown's character, he ends up, for the last 20 years or so, he's been killing women. So it's been hitchhikers mostly, and it's all women. And he keeps their bodies in like cryostasis underneath his house in the woods, or a cabin in the woods. And she ends up figuring this whole entire plot out with help of Dexter, with help of this podcaster that's going through town here. So she ends up meeting Batista mid-season at a conference in New York City. So she has his number, and she realizes that him and Dexter work together when she realizes who Dexter really was. This police detective finds out who Dexter really was. So when she has all the evidence, she ends up getting all the evidence, because she also sees in the bodies around here and the people that have been hurt around here the pin mark from the needle that he puts into people to knock them out. And then she goes back in the archives and looks at the bodies from Miami Metro and all the Bay Harbor butcher cases and sees that same postmark from a shot. So she puts two and two together in no time and finds out that Dexter is the killer, and he's hiding in her and she's dating him, which is crazy. So she calls Batista and tells him over the phone, is like, look at your computer, I just sent you a shot by shot of this is Dexter right now. And I put it in our notes, the picture of Batista. It is the greatest vision, I think, of any season of Dexter.
I love
Batista looking at the screen.
Probably my second favorite character besides Dexter himself.
He looks at the screen and realizes, oh fuck, what have we done wrong for 20 fucking years? We worked with this guy.
He pulls out Aguirre's file.
Yeah. And it's such an incredible scene when just the realization, just in his eyes, in his face, that Dexter was the one. It wasn't Dokes. It was just everything, the history of this whole entire show in one shot. The whole entire Dexter story in one shot. It was amazing. Dexter gets immediately arrested by his girlfriend. He ends up killing an officer, this Logan, who's he's the wrestling coach, and he escapes the police station. And he ends up asking Harrison to meet him in the woods to plan their escape. Harrison finds out that he killed one of his favorite coaches, Officer Logan. Yep. And in retaliation,
he realizes it's not because of the dark passenger. Like, Dexter will just kill somebody if he gets him out of a certain situation.
Yep. And in retaliation for that and all the pain that Dexter has caused him throughout his whole entire life, Harrison takes the shotgun, shoots him, but Dexter kind of welcomes death. He actually tells him, make sure you take off the safety. He ends up telling him to find where the right shot is to kill him. It's fucking crazy. A very cool visual. As Dexter's about to die, he's cycling through everyone that he has hurt and died in his killing ways. We're going from LaGuardia to his sister to Harry, because Harry died because he couldn't live with everything. Very, very cool visually. And that leaves you with the speculations. Now the series ended. Harrison goes. He's run away.
When Harrison says to him, I think the line is, "Look what you've made me do," or "Look what you're making me do." That's the very first line Dexter says to his very first victim 5 minutes into the first episode of Dexter, where he says, "Look at what you've made me done," and it's Harrison says that same exact line. And I love the letter at the end. Because of course we're about to bring up Resurrection, which is coming out apparently. But the letter at the end, where Harrison knew this whole time that something was fucked up with his father, and then he finally found out what it was as he's leaving. And the letter that he wrote Hannah, explaining where he was, that led him to find Dexter. I just liked everything about this season. I do wish we got Dexter on the run for like an episode or two, but I love this series.
But yeah, that leaves us with some major speculation going forward. And they actually talked about it, I think today, as early as maybe yesterday or today, the series is really happening. They have a story that is going to continue this story with Dexter. And it made me think, like, you didn't see him dead. You saw a lot of blood. You see him in the woods. Did he really die?
The Walter White thing where no one...
Right.
There was speculation that he might have lived at the end of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, right. Did he really die? And obviously, if they're continuing this, he's either going to be Harrison's dark passenger, or he did survive and he ends up escaping, which I don't think he's going to escape. I don't know how they would play that out, because his girlfriend, which I hope she's in the next season. The other thing I hope is we get Miami Metro. Yeah. Oh, Batista, Mazuka, Quinn, everybody coming back. This would be a great time for that. Holy shit.
Yes.
And should I read the books? Should I listen to the audiobooks?
They're completely different outside of the first one.
That's what I was going to ask you. I knew that.
It's funny that the author finished the last book after the last season of this came out, and from what I read, I've only read 3 of them. But from what I read, like, there's so much backlash, obviously, about the last season, and he basically kills Dexter the same exact way, except he's actually dead, I believe, in the books.
Okay.
But the books they're all right. I mean, they're good. It's just weird listening to somebody else portray Dexter's voice. It's kind of weird to get used to that part. But the first book's very good. Second book's good. Third book's good. I just haven't gotten any after that.
You know what would be cool? Kind of like Andy Serkis went back and did the Lord of the Rings book. Anthony Michael Hall should go. Or Anthony... What's his name? Not Anthony Michael Hall.
Michael C. Hall.
Michael C. Hall.
Yes.
It'd be great if he went back and did the audiobooks for that. I think he should. They should pay him all the money for that. But yeah, Dexter, great series. I'm glad you got me to watch that.
I'm glad you finally did.
I don't know where to go after this. I'm glad that we're caught up, because now we've got Dexter, a new beginning, or new generation, whatever the fuck the new one is. That comes out next year, or the end of this year, so that's great. And we're caught up on that. We can watch that week to week.
Yes.
But yeah, it's awesome. Awesome show. I understand the hype now. I love that vigilante shit. The vigilante stuff is just fantastic.
He's Batman with a different set of rules. That's all he is. He's got rules, but they're completely different, and they're all from the same... Something happened to him traumatic when he was a child, and it plays out throughout his entire life, which is... I obviously love Batman, so it's great.
Yep. So, with that being said, a half hour in, we talked a lot about Dexter. Talk about some other things that I watched this week, the last couple of weeks. Ended up watching the Dirty Pop documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you've heard about this at all, but it's all about Lou Pearlman and how he started the boy band craze in the 90s with Backstreet Boys and then NSYNC.
Gotcha.
This is a very, very good documentary. I recommend it. But it starts off with him owning a whole bunch of blimps. And with that money, he starts up boy bands. He ends up starting Backstreet Boys first in the early 90s. Then they take off in the mid 90s. Creates his own competition with NSYNC, so nobody else would come up with a competition for Backstreet Boys. And NSYNC becomes huge too. They're both huge together. They get so big and realize that they're not getting any money from Lou Pearlman, that they ended up breaking ties with him in the late 90s, did their own thing, did their own records towards the end. And then you come to find out all the money that he had was all through weird real estate and stuff and insurance Ponzi schemes. And the documentary talks a lot about how he fucked over a lot of people. Gets found out by the FBI, the U.S. government, goes to jail, dies in prison, and I think like 10 years ago now, something like that, 2016, I remember. But great story. And of course, he has a unmarked grave after everything he's done, after all the success he had. He had these he had government friends, he had friends in the industry, the entertainment industry. He has an unmarked grave in New Jersey or New York somewhere, with nobody knowing where his body is. And it's just crazy to see somebody was being so prominent for so long and nobody cares about him in death. It's weird, but he fucked over a lot of people, so it's rightful. The other thing I watched on Netflix was Baby Reindeer. We talked about it. Have you watched any of Baby Reindeer yet?
I have not.
Ooh, this show, I gotta tell you, you gotta watch it. It's great. All about a comedian who was in Scotland, I believe, and he ends up getting a stalker. This woman goes into a bar where he's bartending, and she's stalking him. And there's, I think, 7 half-hour episodes, very quick and easy to get through, and it's amazing. You should watch it.
Check it out.
Yeah, very short, very easy, very quick to get into. I like the actor who plays him. I like the actress who plays the stalker. I think she's fucking fantastic. She's getting a lot of praise, rightfully so. So that's a great, great show. Watch that. It's on Netflix.
Excellent.
You've watched Bad Boys Ride or Die a while ago. I watched it while we were away. Overall, decent movie. Not the best of the franchise. Reggie has a great great moment in that.
Yes, he does. The Reggie scene alone is worth the price of admission.
Yep, very good. And yeah, it's just good to see that. I think Martin Lawrence is a little slow in his older age, and this is also a retribution for Will Smith's career after he smacked Chris Rock. But yeah, it's kind of what he needed to do to get that off of his back. So, another movie that I watched. Oh, by the way, Bad Boys Ride or Die, probably 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Yep. Quiet Place Day 1. I watched Quiet Place 2 a few months back to get ready for this movie. I did watch it. This stars Joseph Quinn, Lupita Nyong'o, Dishman, whatever his name. He was also in A Quiet Place Part 2. Yeah, he's in a whole bunch. He's in everything.
He's in everything.
Yep. But overall, it's great to see the invasion happening in a big city and what would happen if New York City was invaded. It was fantastic. And Joseph Quinn, Eddie from Stranger Things, the new Johnny Storm, of course, which I fucking can't wait for.
Yep.
He's going to be huge. This is a great stepping stone for him. Overall, great story. And it sets up Quiet Place Part 2 as well. It's a little kind of prequel to that. So that's kind of cool. So let's get into the mess of everything. The 6 hours of my life that I lost this week. Rebel Moon, the director's cut on Netflix. Now, I watched Part 1, like you did. Almost gave up on it. I did give up on it, and I said, well, why the fuck am I watching a PG-13 rating when even Snyder knows that there's going to be a better version coming out 6 months later, 5 months later, that is going to be R-rated, gory, sex everywhere, language, which I liked. I will tell you, I didn't watch Part 2 because of that. I gave up on it, but I did watch Part 2 2 days ago. Now, like I said, the 6 hours could have been at least 4 if it hadn't been less slow-mo, especially in the last part, because there was so much slow-mo killing in that last part.
There is a lot of slow-mo.
Overall, though, this was fantastic, but it should have been a lot shorter. 6 hours to tell a story on a farm and a little bit of a story in space. This could have been shortened to at least 2.5 hours and told the same exact story with a good editing. You can
say the same thing about pretty much most of his director's cuts.
Right. It's a little ambitious for him, let's just say that. But overall, I thought it was great, and I liked everything being open and no PG-13 limits. I think opening that world up like that and having I like seeing blood. I like seeing the gore. I like seeing limbs being cut off. I liked the language. It just opened everything up, and it didn't feel like it was on a crutch. It felt like it was just fuck it, let's just go.
The opening 20 minutes of the first one was way better than the PG-13.
Yeah, and I didn't watch the second part, so I can't compare it. But it was definitely better the first one. Sex was brought up a notch. Nudity was brought up a notch. Everything was great. Overall, if I had to rate them, the first one's probably a 4 out of 5. The second one's probably a 3.5 out of 5. And I would say at the end, it leaves a huge cliffhanger that I don't know if we're ever going to see answered.
It's going to be
a huge cliffhanger.
The guy who was backing him at Netflix left after the first one's dropped in December to make his own company. Man. So we'll see. I enjoyed these much more with the R rating. Obviously, I thought that there was so much left out of the story the first time, especially in part 1, where it's just going from place to place to place to place, exposition, place to place. You actually get more story involved this time, even though there is a good amount of exposition also. But it allowed the entire thing to breathe, I'd give them. I mean, I'm counting them as one movie, so I'd say a solid 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Just because I did enjoy it. Like I'm saying though, if I saw this when I was like 15 years old, honestly, probably would be my favorite movie.
It would have blown me away. It would have blown me away. It would have been our obsession back then. But for now, as we're
Aging.
adults who like to critique every little thing, especially that Snyder does. There's definitely 3.5 for the second one, 4 for the first one. I think, like I said, if he had brought in a great editor to edit this down, we could have had because the thing about Snyder, visually stunning scenes in this movie.
Oh my god.
Writing is fucking atrocious, and getting the story out has been hard for him ever since Sucker Punch maybe.
Sucker Punch I do not enjoy at all. He's not a very good writer, but like if somebody writes his stuff, he's fantastic at putting that on screen. Because he has to be held back a little bit. Of course, the original script for Man of Steel didn't call for him. He's the one that made the choice to have Zod's neck broken, which is like the main like talking point of that film.
Kevin, we don't have enough time to get into the Man of Steel of this whole situation with Snyder.
We'll do that when before Superman 2025 comes out. But yeah,
because you know my feelings on that, and I've had that feeling ever since I saw it in the theater. So
yes.
But to each his own. Rebel Moon Part 2, great. As far as the R-rated cut, not sure the PG-13. I will never watch that. This is the only cut I care.
In both cases,
These are the only cuts I'll ever care about.
Yep.
And I do hope that maybe he'll shop it around or do something to do a Part 3 because I was hoping that by the end of this we would see her meet her father. Didn't happen. We knew by the end of this.
Left a lot open for the sequels to be. So hopefully he doesn't get same treatment as he did on his Justice League, which obviously the end of that movie was like, we have more to show you. And then WB was like, nah.
Fucking James Gunn. Maybe I'm starting to follow these Snyder people after all. Oh my god. Batman Cape Crusader on Prime. I watched the whole entire series. You're studying about halfway through it, right? Reimagining, almost a new beginning to Batman the Animated Series from the 90s. This is set in a noir, 1940s style, 1930s style noir Gotham City, including reimagining of the characters as well. For the very first episode, we see a penguin who's female named Oswalda Cobblepot. But we also see a brand new version of Clayface, Catwoman, all in a noir style, almost like a 1940s. If you were watching a 1940s television show or movie, that's kind of what you would see. You see Firebug. You see a little quick cameo of King Tut, who is prominent in the Adam West series. Not so much in the comic books, but that's where everybody remembers him. We see a new version of Harley Quinn, which I didn't really like in this. Gentleman Ghost, Onomatopoeia was created by Kevin Smith. Nocturna, Killer Croc, and he works as a carnival person at the end of the season. The end of the season also has to do with Two-Face. And you haven't seen it, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because you kind of probably figured you'd see the Joker. Very quick scene at the end, you do see Joker, and that's a tease for Season 2, that he's starting to kidnap people with this laughing serum, and they end up laughing themselves to death. And the Joker that we see is the depiction of the man who laughs, who was the Joker in the 30s, right. So very dark and menacing, all the white face, the one that if you've seen like a 1930s picture of the man who laughs, it's the one that was the Joker had the comic book comic book creation was created off the likeness of that character in the movies. But the cartoon, it's him. You can't miss him. It looks exactly like him. It looks like the Joker of early days comics from Batman. But overall, I liked it. Something missing from it. I think it's just we're just so used to the animated series and how great that was at telling a story, and I think it was kind of half-assed with this. Great 23-minute episodes to get through if you want to watch them. They're on Prime.
Yeah, they're quick.
Very quick. And you want to review Trap, which you watched in the theater while we were away. M. Night Shyamalan. Oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you now, I canceled Regal Unlimited again.
God damn it.
I had to, money
Well,
wise,
there's nothing coming out. There's nothing
and
coming
that
out,
too.
so.
I had to wait until Deadpool because I already
Yes.
reserved tickets. I didn't want to fuck
Yes.
that all up, so I waited. I had to cancel it again. So, which sucks. But you did see Trap. You're not going to get into
Yes.
spoilers.
Obviously not.
However, did it live up to the hype that you kind of had for looking at this trailer, seeing Josh Hartnett,
Okay.
everything going on with this movie?
I will say this. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. It is so stupid in so many parts because he just gets out of situations very stupidly. And you're just like, that would never happen, but you're having so much fun with him. But basically, as we all know from the trailer, this isn't a spoiler, they literally put it in the trailer. He's at basically a Taylor Swift concert with his daughter.
Yep.
It's not Taylor Swift, it's actually M. Night's daughter just doing the pop songs, but a pop concert. The equivalent of like a Taylor Swift. They have floor seats, they're having a great time. He starts talking to a security guy or a guy selling t-shirts and asks why there's so much security around. Guy says because the whole concert was set up to be a trap for the serial killer because they got a tip that he was going to be at the concert. So M. Night puts that right in the trailer. Josh Hartnett is the serial killer. So it's basically he's living two lives, one of a serial killer and one of a father. And this is the only time those two lives are kind of collided into each other. There is a lot you do not see in the trailer, like an entire half a film. Josh Hartnett has so many sweet moments with his daughter, like good father-daughter stuff. That's very sweet. And then when the serial killer side comes out in him, he is fucking amazing. Josh Hartnett has been one of my favorite actors since like I saw The Faculty when I was like fucking 17.
Oh yeah, Faculty.
I've followed him his entire career because that was like the first thing he was cast in. First movie he ever was in was Halloween H2O. So I've been following him his entire career. Obviously he was in Oppenheimer, but he is fantastic in this film. M. Night shoots the hell out of it.
Okay.
If you're going in thinking because it's M. Night that there's got to be a second twist, don't. That might ruin your experience. I saw that on Twitter before I saw it, and so I was like, okay, good. I don't have to sit there and wait for a second twist. And I think I had a better time knowing that, having that knowledge. The twist in the trailer, the twist in the first 20 minutes of the movie. I had a lot of fun. It's solid 3.5 out of 5.
Nice.
We'll definitely see it again when it comes out. Things that were really cool is M. Night's daughter. Like, if she's not a good musician, this movie does not work. And her songs were catchy as hell.
Nice.
Like, I had one of them stuck in my head when I was leaving the theater. I believe she did the entire soundtrack herself. It's very good. The girl that plays his daughter is very good. Obviously, I already talked about Hartnett being really good. And those are the only characters I'll talk about. Obviously, M. Night makes an appearance, as he always does. But there is a lot of stupid stuff, which it does feel like a movie from the 90s, because that's kind of the stuff that we had growing up in the 90s was these plots, and then like a lot of like stupid stuff would happen, and guys would get out of certain situations, very much like that. But I definitely had a good time, and I cannot wait for you to see it.
Nice, cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So we are right now in the middle and beginning of August, and we are 10 years ago, where we had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. We're going to talk about that first before we get into Robin. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 was a pivot point for comic book movies in general, putting music, popular music into movies, which we talked about with Guardians ad nauseum on this show, how it just worked with James Gunn when he did that. But Guardians was huge for us. Huge for comic book movies, huge for Marvel. I mean, everything that came after that changed. Suicide Squad, when they came out with the first one, they had a lot of popular music in that kind of... Right, yeah. The movie was...
They took that movie from David Ayer's fucking hands, they fucked it all up. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, we won't get into that. We won't get into any DC Snyder stuff, because that was a sad, sore time. But made Chris Pratt a star. I mean, he was in Parks and Recreation, lost a ton of weight, gained a lot of muscle, became a heartthrob. Zoe Saldana, who was in a lot of things. At that point, she had already done Avatar. She's been in a lot of movies at that point, but this made her a huge star. Dave Bautista, but at this point, we knew him as Batista from wrestling. Yes. But him as Drax just took it up a notch. And then, of course, Rocket and Groot. Groot we fell in love with in the first movie. Rocket and their relationship, and we wanted to learn more. We ended up learning a little bit more going forward in the next 2 movies, but overall, I mean, it was huge. I mean, I think we saw that. I think at least I saw this twice, maybe 3 times in the theater. Saw it in IMAX, and it's just.
We met Kyle, and he pulls like a clothesline out of his pocket to start striking it.
Yeah, that's right. That was the movie. You're right.
That was hilarious.
Yep. But yeah, 10 years ago. It's hard to believe. And the reason why we're going to talk about Robin Williams next is because I left the theater of Guardians of the Galaxy the second time in IMAX and saw the news that Robin Williams had passed away. Robin Williams in our childhood was huge, especially for me. Every movie, television show that I grew up with was surrounded with this guy. Going into his retrospective of his career and learning about his career and how he became a comedic actor, where he came from, and then, of course, his tragic ending, which I'm not going to get into it. Very, very sad what happened to him. We're going to get into it a little bit, but not the details. But 10 years ago, Robin Williams left us. He was born in Chicago, grew up in Detroit. His father was an executive at Ford. So he was living there until his father retired, and then they ended up moving to California. He went to high school in California. At the time of his graduation in 1969, he was voted the most likely not to succeed and the funniest by his classmates. He ended up getting a full scholarship to Juilliard, which we talked about Juilliard before. Huge acting school. He ended up going to school. He dropped out junior year because his professor told him there was nothing more that I can teach you. That's how great he was in Juilliard. He became a San Francisco, LA comic. His comedy was reality based. At the time, he was into alcohol, drugs, sex. So a lot of that content and topics were picked apart throughout the 70s and 80s and the stand-up, even later in life too. He thought it was cheaper than therapy to do this comedy thing, which was great. Gave him a way to release his pent-up energy and emotions. He had so much energy on stage. There are stories because he was on coke in the 70s, like everybody.
Well, yeah, who wasn't?
So there's a lot of stories of him. As much as he sweat, that he had so much BO. It was all from the coke. He was just so coked out of his mind. He got his start on television on Happy Days. There was a episode where Mork, the alien, comes to Wisconsin to the Happy Days people, Richie Cunningham, the Cunninghams, and Robin Williams got to start on that episode. Episode did so well for Happy Days that they ended up spinning it off to Mork and Mindy. Mork and Mindy was my first. Between that and Popeye were my first lexicon with Robin Williams. Robin's handheld fourth camera. At this time, shows were filmed with 3 cameras. Mm-hmm. He was moving around so much on stage that they had to have a handheld on him at all times to capture his performance, because he'd be going up on the top of the stairs, he'd be going on the couch, going back and forth, so they had to keep the camera on him, and that's where a fourth camera started. That was the very first time a fourth camera was ever used on a sitcom. Been used ever since. And the tapings for Mork and Mindy became legend. 3-hour tapings because of all the improv and the raunchiness. I watched a documentary which we're going to talk about at the end, but there were so much behind the scenes stuff that was never on air. I would love to see just a whole entire 3-hour taping of Mork and Mindy. Yeah. But it became an underground hit in Hollywood at the time, where everybody went to Hollywood to want to see that. And then after that, he would still go out at night, perform 5 or 6 sets at like the Comedy Store and Improv to kind of to hone his stuff.
No wonder he used so much cocaine. He needed the fucking energy.
Right, and then this is also like the second season is where the coke and the drugs started to really take effect to him. But that got canceled. He ended up going into HBO, the stand-up of HBO, which everybody was getting specials in the 80s. He was huge on that. I remember the Met special, which in the documentary I'm going to talk about at the end. They talk about that. But he got from Mork and Mindy. He got a lot of movies. Like I mentioned, Popeye was the big one for me. Popeye the Sailor Man. He played that with what's her name, who passed a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Yep. But he did Shelley Duvall.
Yes.
But he did Good Morning Vietnam, Dead Poets Society, and for us, Aladdin, huge as the genie. That was like our childhood right there. Fern Gully, he had a falling out with Disney. Did Fern Gully after that. Didn't do Return of Jafar and Prince of Thieves because of it. They hired somebody else to do his voice. For me, Mrs. Doubtfire, huge. Hook, even bigger in my life. Patch Adams, The Birdcage with Nathan Lane. One of the very first times we saw gay characters on a movie screen in a comedic way, and he did that with Nathan Lane. Good Will Hunting, of course, we talked about that before. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, their big rise to fame. He ended up getting an Academy Award for that. Jumanji, another big movie. Jack, another great movie where he plays this kid who grows up way too fast. He ends up being 10 or 12 years old, and he looks like Robin Williams as an adult. Based on a true story. Flubber, kind of where his career went a little bit too childish. Bicentennial Man, another great underrated movie from Disney where he plays a robot who lives through a bicentennial, and he's lives, I think, 200 years of showing him from being a robot to being an android at the end, living through a whole bunch of humanity. It's really cool. And then he kind of ended his career with the Night at the Museum movies where he played Theodore Roosevelt in a museum. RV, he did a movie called RV, License to Wed. But he's underrated. His Juilliard acting, everybody knew how great he was as a Juilliard actor. And when he went into it was no surprise that when he went into drama, when he did The Awakenings, he did The Fisher King, he did on Insomnia, 1 Hour Photo. I know you've seen some of these.
I want to say one thing that when, like, I'd seen Insomnia before, but when he did an episode of Law and Order Special Victims Unit.
Yes, I forgot to put that on here.
And that is easily a top 5 episode of the show. I love that episode, and he is absolutely. I don't know if you've seen it because you haven't.
I haven't. I heard about it. I didn't put it in the notes.
It's fantastic. You can probably find it on Hulu. I think it's season 9, 10, or 11. But it's outstanding, and he absolutely fucking kills it the entire time. He gets to play with a lot of stuff. He plays with his voices. As he's different people in that show. He does like kind of everything he's done in his career. Like he does a little comedy in it, but he's mostly a serious actor in it, and he's fantastic in it.
2 movies I can't watch anymore. One is What Dreams May Come. It's about him dying and trying to find himself in heaven. I can't watch that. It's too fucking dark. And World's Greatest Dad. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. The first half is classic, fantastic Robin Williams comedy. And then something happens in the middle of the movie, and it's so dark and so twisted that the end of the movie, it's just hard to get past it. I remember watching it. It was tough. It was a tough watch. But like you mentioned, his impression, he was an impression master. He was an improv king. He just mastered comedy in a way that I don't think anybody before him has, and probably will ever do. But a little bit about him. He was in an advanced program at Juilliard with Christopher Reeves. They ended up becoming friends, close friends, up until Reeves died in 2004. He's also in the same class with William Hurt and Mandy Patinkin. Montoya from I can't remember the movie. Princess Bride. He started comic relief with Whoopi Goldberg and Billy Crystal to help the homeless population. His daughter's name is Zelda. He was a huge fan of Legend of Zelda, video games in general. He's also a huge fan of pen and paper, like D&D role-playing games. Big anime fan. He's a big, huge nerd. Big anime fan, big figure collector. He wanted to be Hagrid in Harry Potter. Chris Columbus, who directed Mrs. Doubtfire, rejected the idea because he wanted to keep the edict of being a British-only cast, which I think would have been great as Hagrid. He did a lot of USO shows. He did in 13 countries. He performed in front of 90,000 troops in total eventually. And he also did a viral episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? If you've never seen that, look it up on YouTube. Robin Williams on Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's just him in his perfect environment of him being able to just do improv for a half hour straight with Drew Carey and the whole entire crew. And of course, he died 10 years ago. As this episode airs on our podcast, it's going to be August 11th. 63 years old. He had early onset dementia and Parkinson's, which he didn't make public. It didn't happen until after he died. After years of abuse from drugs, alcohol, and he had severe depression too throughout his whole entire life. Very quiet, private guy. But he wanted to perform. Whenever a camera was in front of him, an audience was in front of him, he would give everything. And some clubs used to either pay him in green or white, which I thought was a great line. He was a casual friend of John Belushi, which this story in the documentary I'm going to talk about. Robin Williams, Come Inside My Mind. This came out in 2018, right 6 years after he died. This is on HBO and Max. If you have not seen this documentary, watch it. Lots of bloopers, lots of deleted scenes of his improv, and a lot of these stories that I had already written about, I saw in this documentary, so that's why I ended up watching it, because I heard about how great the documentary was. But he was a casual friend to John Belushi, and he died in 1982 of a drug overdose, of course, but it was the morning after him and Robin had actually partied the night before, and he was part of the whole entire investigation into his death. He ended up cooperating with the police and during the investigation. But along with the birth of his son Zach, it prompted him to quit the drugs and alcohol pretty much after that point. He said he had a few, like when you're addicted to stuff like that, he had a few hiccups between then and his death as well. I think he had one in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s as well. He had to go to rehab, but he has a star in the Walk of Fame. He handed footprints in Grauman's Chinese Theater. Oscar winner for Good Will Hunting, multiple Golden Globes, Emmys, Screen Actors Guild, and Grammys awards for his comedy act. The guy was a workhorse, a comedic legend. I hope that we see somebody like him. I don't think we'll ever see anybody like him, but I hope that kids these days will look back and see movies from him and realize how great he was and how well where a lot of comedic actors now get their influence from him. Just amazing talent. And like I said, watch this documentary. Come Inside My Mind. It's on HBO Max. Incredible documentary and incredible person. And I loved Robin Williams.
Yep, me too.
So, with that being said, with that somber note, let's get into the news. And it's not news of the trailer roundup. I'm sorry for YouTube listeners. My sound effects aren't playing on YouTube because I don't have it hooked up on there. But for podcast listening, don't worry about it.
Yes,
we'll figure this whole thing out. Right after we got off the pod last time, the full trailer for Hellboy: The Crooked Man came out. I think it looks good, but the only thing is I miss Ron Perlman. Yeah. I really wish they finished that trilogy.
Yeah.
Ron Perlman was great as Hellboy.
Between him and Del Toro, I mean, they had the perfect time to do that trilogy.
Oh, perfect. Oh, yeah. I was thinking it's WB at the time, or one of the. I can't remember who did that. They wouldn't pay for the third movie, and I thought the second one was good too. I thought both of those movies were fantastic, but there's a third. This is the third iteration of Hellboy with a new actor coming in to play him. The guy who created Hellboy is directing this time. Looks very much B movie type. But the trailer looked okay. Like I said, I miss Ron Perlman, and it's going to be hard for me to get through this. Just like it was David Harbour when I tried to watch David Harbour, when it was hard for me to watch that. We love David Harbour, but I love Ron Perlman better as Hellboy. He's my Hellboy. We saw the first trailer debuted at Comic-Con after the Marvel Hall H panel for Kevin Smith's 4:30 movie.
Yes.
This looked great too. However, I don't know. It's Kevin Smith, hit or miss. Jay and Silent Bob movies mostly hit for the most part.
Mostly. Yes.
But his other movies are very missy, especially in later years with Tusk and Yoga Hosers, which is an atrocity to films.
Yes.
But,
see, I love Tusk. That's because I love B horror movies.
I like Tusk.
To me, that was
I like
right
Tusk
up my
too.
alley. But as far as the general audience is concerned, he doesn't really make movies for them.
This movie is set in the 80s. It's about him and a bunch of... It's kind of based off his life, where him and a bunch of friends go to the movies.
I like the idea of it.
Yep, but it does look good. And during that last episode of House of Dragon, They played final footage for 2025 for a new series on HBO,
Yes.
including The Last of Us Season 2, Welcome to Derry, the It prequel, and what was the other one? Oh, Knights of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yes.
So we saw Welcome to Derry. We see some menacing scenes from that. We see The Last of Us Season 2.
In between seasons 2 and 3 of House of the Dragon, we're going to get that show should be coming out next April, so you'll get your Game of Thrones fix next April. Should be good.
Yep.
It's an interesting story from what I've heard. I haven't read it, but I probably will before.
Dunkin' Egg is what you said before, right?
Yep.
So yeah, looked good, looked decent. We only got very, very small glimpses of these, but looking forward to seeing that. I don't think we're ever, for at least the next 10 years, I think we're going to have Game of Thrones in our vicinity.
Lexicon,
for sure.
Yes.
Lots of stories to be told.
Yes.
So. And yesterday, a brand new trailer for Saturday Night, directed by Jason Reitman.
Yes.
This is the story about the very first episode
good.
of Saturday Night Live. The R-rated trailer looked amazing. Jason Wright's great director to begin with. So bringing in all these young actors to play all these iconic characters. The kid who plays John Belushi, there was one point in the trailer I actually thought it was John Belushi.
Yeah.
The kid looked exactly like him.
Yep.
And the kid who plays Dan Aykroyd, Dylan O'Brien, he's in the Maze Runner movies. He plays Dan Aykroyd. Lamar plays I can't remember his name, but he's in New Girl. Lamar, I can't remember his name. Garrett Morris, he plays him. But yeah, and then the guy who plays Chevy Chase, I think he looks great too. I don't know what I've seen him in. I know I've seen him in something. Oh, Riddler from Gotham.
Yep.
Yep. But yeah, the whole entire cast looks great. Talking about October 11th, 1975, when Saturday Night Live went live for the very first time. So excited for that. Vanity Fair did a whole bunch of new photos for that as well. So looking forward to that coming out. They officially announced coming out on October 11th of this year in a couple months. So excited about that. 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live this year. So excited about that too. We'll get into that later on in the year. But let's get into the news. Box office last week, Deadpool and Wolverine won the domestic box office 2 weeks ago with $205 million in the domestic, $483 million worldwide. Made it huge, like R-rated, breaking huge records. Second weekend did even better. We'll talk about it in a minute. Twisters did $35 million 2 weeks ago, and Despicable Me 4 did $14.4. Deadpool and Wolverine for the second weekend made $28.3 million last Friday. Ended up making another $97 million in a massive second weekend. Unheard of for a big Marvel movie. The word of mouth of this movie, and plus, gotta tell you, social media for this movie has gone crazy. Like there's no such thing as pirating a movie, because I've seen almost the whole entire movie in little short clips on YouTube and Facebook.
Dune 2, somebody put the entirety of Dune 2 on Twitter like 3 days after it came out in fucking HD. Like, I watched it at work.
Yeah, I've seen the Bye 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 dance probably the beginning of this movie probably 6 times. That's how awesome it is. But it's shown in full like HD quality on YouTube and Facebook.
And the end fight with all the Deadpools, I've seen a bunch too.
Twisters made $22 million last week, and Trap made $15.6 in third. And Deadpool and Wolverine is estimated to win again this weekend for the third weekend in a row. I think the only big movie is another movie that's coming out with Blake Lively, his wife in real life, Ryan Reynolds' wife. This is his only competition. They're going to easily beat them. But it ended up hitting $824 million globally, pushing Disney past $3 billion in 2024, which is huge. Between that and Inside Out 2, and I can't remember the other big one, but those were huge juggernauts for them. It also passed Passion of the Christ to become the highest rated grossing R-rated movie of all time in domestic box office, which is huge.
He is Marvel
amazing.
Jesus.
He is Marvel Jesus. He beat regular Jesus. That's how huge he is.
He beat Marvel Jesus, beat regular Jesus.
Yep.
What a time to be alive.
AMC theaters. I mean, we've had a lot of great success in movies in this last year or so. Reports a $32.8 million quarterly loss thanks to the Hollywood strikes. Even though we had some great movies, there was a lot of flops this year. a lot of flops in the theater, and like Fall Guy and Horizon, big huge blockbuster movies that did not make the theaters any money. I think didn't Fall Guy come out like 2 weeks after on iTunes?
Yeah, that was quick.
Yeah, Horizon did too. So Furiosa did as well. Furiosa just came out recently. So
Yep.
House of Dragon season 2, Sunday's finale hit 8.9 million homes. Viewers across HBO and Max, becoming huge for them. Still down from the first season finale, I believe, but still pretty big. We'll see what happens, but let's get into the rest of the news. Rest in peace today to Kevin Sullivan. I didn't know anything about Kevin Sullivan until I started doing the WCWF watch a couple of years ago. Kevin Sullivan was a Taskmaster.
Awesome. In the 80s, he was fantastic.
I saw a meme today, Kevin.
Oh, no.
Of course, it was Chris Benoit.
Yeah, because everyone thinks Kevin Sullivan killed Chris Benoit and his family.
And it shows Chris Benoit laughing. Like he got his final.
Oh, boy.
But
yeah.
Kevin Sullivan, Taskmaster, of course, was a booker at WCW, Nitro, all those years. Didn't have any idea, because when I started watching WCW, he was already off television. He was more of a behind-the-scenes guy. I don't think I ever saw him wrestle. And then, of course, when I started watching Nitro before I gave up on it, I saw him everywhere. He was on the show all the time. I was like, what the fuck is this guy?
He and Benoit had that really, really hard battle. I think it was at a pay-per-view where they literally just beat the piss out of each other, because that was right after Nancy left Kevin for Chris,
woman.
and they turned into an angle. Yeah.
Yeah, he was married to a woman, and then Chris ended up leaving Kevin for him, and then you know the rest.
Nancy left Kevin for Chris. Not Kevin for Nancy.
Hey, to each his own, Kevin. But yeah, rest in peace to him. I didn't know much about him. Very, very thick Boston accent. He's from that area, so rest in peace to him. Let's get into San Diego Comic-Con, the follow-up. Where we last left off, it was Hall H panel. During the Hall H panel, they gave out a map of pretty much the New York skyline of Fantastic Four. And they showed the Baxter Building. They showed a whole bunch of stuff from the Manhattan skyline with the Fantastic Four reboot. They also had all 4 characters on this, kind of like a fan / map that they were giving out to all the people in the crowd for the Hall H panel. We also saw, I don't know if you saw the trailer that leaked for Fantastic Four. It did leak online. All the shots of the trailer, I did put them in our notes.
Yes.
Yeah, looks great. The Galactus at the last scene that you see Galactus peering through a window looked fantastic. Yep. I can't wait. I'm glad he's not a cloud monster this time. But we got another year, less than a year for that, so that's awesome. Mm-hmm. They started filming right. Yep. Oh my God, it's gonna be a fun 2025 in general, Kevin.
Yep.
But they started filming. We saw some scenes of it looks like a Fantastic Four Baxter Building. We've seen that a little behind the scenes spy shots of that. We see a restaurant that's on there, so it looks really cool. And of course, the big news coming out of Hall H was Robert Downey Jr. And the rumors of him being reportedly in Fantastic Four, debuting maybe in the after credits scene, which makes sense. He's a Fantastic Four villain. My speculation is Galactus is going to be a multiversal villain. He's going to destroy the Fantastic Four's world.
Yep, that's what everyone's saying.
And that's going to force them to come to 616, and it's also going to force this version of Doom, who is Robert Downey Jr., to come to 616.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody knows the face because it's Tony Stark in this reality, but in that reality, he's Victor Von Doom, or it could be Tony Stark. We're not really sure, but I'm looking forward to it. It's had a lot of backlash, but
it all depends on if the writing's great.
Even
though it is the Russos. They don't really write their own movies. They just help out with that stuff. So as long as the writing is on point,
they brought in.
I mean, the guy from Ant-Man's off the scene, so hopefully it'll improve over that.
They brought in the writers, McFeely. They brought in one of them, but they didn't bring back the other one. So you have to wait and see. Robert Downey Jr. actually met for Doctor Doom once before in 2005, right before he did Iron Man, for the ones that were done for Fox. But they ended up giving it to the guy from Nip Tuck instead. I can't remember his name, but
yes.
Gwyneth Paltrow posted on one of his socials when he announced that he was going to be Doctor Doom. She says, "I don't get it. Are you a baddie now?" I think she's so out of it with Marvel. I don't think she really knew what she was doing when she was there.
Spider-Man.
She had no idea she was in Spider-Man either. Yeah. But this also brought a lot of kind of social media questioning, like, okay, so Jonathan Majors was fired for something that he's done. Rightfully so. He did some crazy shit. Mm-hmm. But Robert Downey Jr. kind of had this resurgence in his career from all the bad shit that he did in the 90s. So is this going to happen? Is it whitewashing the character because of something that happened? Like, is Jonathan Majors going to get that same respect later on if he kind of shows that he's done well? He talked about in an interview where where he's heartbroken. Of course, he loves Kang. Dr. Doom is wicked, though. I think he thinks it's fair that Mr. Downey is being and has been greeted with patience and courtesy and love after his own history of legal troubles, and allowed to work his art in a creative and be a creative at that level. Obviously, meaning like, hey, I'm trying to get there as well. Hopefully, I'll have that same. He also talked about how he would jump to the chance if Marvel wanted him, call him. He'll be right there. He wants to be Kang. He loves that character. So, what were you gonna say?
Here's the thing: is Robert Downey Jr.'s troubles were his own. He didn't get caught on videotape punching a woman allegedly. I think Jonathan Majors could have that resurgence because people love the comeback story, but it's going to take a long time. Just like it did for Downey, but like everything that happened to Downey was because of Downey. Like it wasn't really hurting other people, like Jonathan Majors' situation.
The craziest story with Robert Downey Jr. is where he was all drugged out. I think he was drunk off his ass. He ended up breaking into somebody's house and fell asleep on their couch or even in their bed. That was the craziest thing. That happened like early 2000s. Yes. Then he got sober, got cleaned up. Then the whole story with Favreau vouching for him. But a lot of people were questioning online, like, will Majors get that same forgiveness eventually that Downey had? So very interesting dialogue. So perhaps maybe later on we'll see. He's a great actor. We talk about it all the time. How awesome
fantastic.
He is. He's so good. The best. Even though Quantumania was a shitty movie, every review, even us, we talked about how great he was in that movie as Kang, and it's just, I really do want to see Kang played out, but I just don't, it won't happen anytime soon. I think this is the right choice to go with Doom. I'm not sure if Robert Downey was the best choice. However, I believe in the Russos, I believe in Marvel, and I believe in the storytelling, and especially Robert Downey Jr. as an actor, to kind of get this character off the foot. This is a character that I've been wanting to see. Dr. Doom is a menacing fucking character. I've been wanting to see him since Fantastic Four in 2005. I wanted to see that character come into a big world event like this, so it's exciting. It's exciting. Marvel is paying $80 million to the Russos to direct the two next Avengers movies. Significantly more to Robert Downey Jr. Of course, is going to get a back end. Of course, I mean that's the whole.
Yes.
The movie's going to make. It's going to be one of the first movies to make $3 billion. I have a feeling, just because of the way ticket sales are, and everybody's hyped up, especially after Deadpool and Wolverine. But yeah, he could be making anywhere between $500 million and $600 million. Over the course of 4 years for Avengers movies, 3 Iron Man outings, cameos in Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Civil War, Homecoming. So this is what he made throughout all that time. $500 to $600 million. $500 million playing Iron Man. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. During Comic-Con, 14 people were arrested at Comic-Con for sex trafficking. I don't know if you saw this or not.
I did not.
Yeah, from the time of Comic-Con, they were doing a sting operation, recovering victims of sex trafficking and sex workers and stuff. Ended up arresting a whole bunch of people. It's good to see stories like that because I know that's in the world. It's a world we live in. There's a lot of crazies out there. A lot of crazy shit happens. So a place like that would be where something like that would happen. So I'm glad they caught them. James Gunn tweeted during the weekend of Deadpool and Wolverine. Yep. Over $206 million for Deadpool and Wolverine this weekend. So happy for Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and Sean Levy, Kevin Liu, and all my friends over at Marvel Studios and moviegoers. Congrats. He's a Marvel guy through and through, even though he works at DC. So it's great and exciting to have him over there. I think that's the only reason later on we may see a DC and Marvel versus Marvel later on way down the line. But,
yes.
Some rumored details about what Kang was originally going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine. He was going to be the big bad instead of Cassandra Nova. There's going to be a lot of instead of the anchor beings, it was kind of going to be different unit. It was going to be kind of like the Council of Kangs was going to be involved. Paradox was collecting anchor beings to create an army against the Council of Kangs, and that's kind of where the movie was going to play out. And then everything happened with him; things had to be changed, and they did the Cassandra Nova story. And of course, the anchor beings are still a thing, which I think is going to play off later on.
Yes.
We kind of talked about it a little bit, like who was the anchor being of 616, which has gone viral since then.
I think it's
don't really know.
going to be Robert Downey
Tony.
Jr.
It's going to be Tony,
Yeah.
It's going to play out in the next Avengers movie for sure. But new rumors claim that Hulk versus Wolverine movie, or I think it's more of this is going to be playing out in a movie later on, probably an Avengers movie where the two of them are going to be facing each other. I could see that because we already saw a little bit of glimpse of that, but everybody wants to see that. Everybody wants to see him just go one-on-one with the Hulk. I want to see Tony Stark, Hugh Jackman, Tobey Maguire on the same screen together in one scene, because those are the three trinity of superheroes that started everything. Even Wesley Snipes. I mean, Wesley Snipes is getting a ton of reaction right now because he is the very first Marvel character on screen, and rightfully so. He has the world record for that. So I guess 2 weeks is the time for a spoiler embargo to be ended, because Ryan Reynolds on Monday started talking about all the spoiler cameos in the movie. First posting about Gambit, talking about how Channing was born to play him, and also asked for a perfect time to couldn't be thrilled for more Gambit. So he's talking about these characters, especially Wesley Snipes, saying, let's give people what they want to see these characters in a way that's showing their legacy, showing for him. I mean, right, for Channing Tatum, he had a whole entire thing he was working on for 10 years. They got scrapped because of the Fox merger with Disney. And it just proved that he would have been a great Gambit, and Deadpool and Wolverine proved that by far. So I'm hoping that we'll see Gambit later on. He's talked a lot about that this week. Channing Tatum, I thought I had lost Gambit forever, but he fought for me and for Gambit. He's talking about Ryan Reynolds, and I will owe him probably forever. I'm so grateful to be in this movie. It's a masterpiece in my opinion. Just pure badass joy, literally screaming in the theaters. I mean, everybody was. Let's fucking go. Yeah. Also, after credit scene, we didn't talk much. We talked a little bit about it, but they were in a TVA office watching the whole bunch of screens in the background, and the only character in those screens were Gambit. Mm-hmm. You actually see Gambit walking around in Cassandra Nova's cave. Makes you think that he's not dead. Which I was hoping wouldn't be the case. We didn't really see what happened to Blade, Elektra, X-23 we know what happened with, but we didn't see what happened with Gambit. We're hoping because he was so good in that movie, there's no way that they could kill him off. And sure enough, he actually survived, so the little bit of a spoiler that maybe he'll be back, I'm hoping. So we've so far seen 4 of the major X-Men characters from the 97 book in the MCU. We saw Xavier in Doctor Strange. We've seen Wolverine. We've seen Gambit in this movie. We saw Beast in the Marvels. So we've seen 4 of the major 8 characters. We haven't seen Cyclops, Storm, or Jean Grey, but it won't take much to get to that point. So very exciting time to be a Marvel fan for sure. And of course, Channing hopes that Deadpool and Wolverine the cameo will lead to a standalone movie or having him in the MCU. From your mouth to God's ears, write it in existence, my friend. He's talking to Variety. Please, of course, I've said it. I've been saying it. I want it for the last 10 years. It's in Bob Iger and Kevin Feige's hands. I pray to God. So do I. I want to see him again on screen.
Me too. And I kind of have an issue with him calling them, or everyone calling them cameos. They're almost just other actors in the movie. Like, to me, like, the Cavill was a cameo. Where, like, these were actual characters. Like, these were actual, like, characters in the movie. All of them, X-23, him, Blade, all of them were. But yeah, it was great to see finally. I mean, I've been talking about wanting to see his Gambit and whatnot for years, so I'm glad we finally did, and I would love to see more of it.
Speaking of X-23, we were kind of speculating, was that the same one from Logan? Was it the same Laura from Logan? And she did confirm that it is the same one, so that makes you think, why did she get zapped and brought to the void? We were kind of asking that when we were doing our review of the movie too. Like, how did these characters, especially Gambit, he said he was kind of born in the Void, but I don't think that's the case. I think he was sent there. But how did these characters get sent to the Void in the first place? How are these worlds? How are they? Especially Laura. Like, what did she do to get her pruned from the regular timeline that she was in the Logan world? So I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more. Maybe we won't. We'll see. There was discussion of bringing back Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider. That didn't go through. There was never any talk of Taylor Swift. Never any talk of Daniel Radcliffe either. That was all internet speculation.
Yeah.
The no cocaine rule wasn't just a joke. That was really something Kevin Feige had told them. That was put in the first trailer. And Hugh Jackman, like I said, lost out of a Marvel record. He was going to be one of the longest running Marvel characters of all time until Wesley Snipes showed up. Wesley Snipes, of course, his Blade movie came out in 1998. Hugh Jackman debuted in 2000 as Wolverine, so he had him beat by 2 years. So now officially, he is the longest running Marvel character on screen. And Ryan Reynolds also posted, the same day as he posted about Channing Tatum being Gambit, he posted that he campaigned for Wesley Snipes to Blade to get a Logan-like send-off. I thought he was great in Deadpool and Wolverine. Of course, didn't get much from him. Got a little bit more from Gambit, but didn't get much from Blade or Elektra, which I don't think we're going to see much more of her. I think it was just like a one-and-done thing with her. But, yeah. It's awesome. The movie is completely great. Like we mentioned before, Henry Cavill as Wolverine, fantastic part of the movie. Sean Levy talked about him. They filmed for 8 hours. He ended up smoking that cigar in that scene for 8 hours. He ended up getting sick to his stomach afterwards for like a day. But overall, great movie. There was a Stan Lee cameo when they were doing the whole bus scene, fighting through the bus. There was a Stan Lee steamer ad on the side of the bus. I wanted to talk about that. And Robert Downey Jr., I mentioned when we were reviewing it, the only thing was missing was him maybe in the after credits scene or him showing up talking to Deadpool when he was talking to Happy Hogan. It would have been great to see Robert Downey Jr. show up as Tony Stark and talk to him. They actually tried that. He actually read scenes for it, but Robert Downey said it didn't really work out, but they also didn't know that he was planning on maybe coming back to play Doom. That was actually in the works, so... he did read for the cameo scene. He just didn't like what they had, and he wanted it to be something better than that. And I think he ended up getting that with Doctor Doom. But Anthony Mackie talking about after the Hall H panel, he was talking about all the reveals of Captain America: Brave New World. He actually let it slip that there may be multiple Hulks in that movie. I would not be surprised if we see Mark Ruffalo show up in a cameo. Maybe even a bigger role than that, because of course he has such a close connection with General Ross. They haven't been, I mean, since Edward Norton, we haven't seen the two of them together. And of course his daughter is the one that he's in love with. So other news, Marvel, a little bit of roundup of Marvel news. Fantastic Four First Steps. Rumors that the First Steps means like it could be first steps to the moon. First steps for a kid, because the rumors are that Franklin Richards, the son of Sue and Reed, is going to debut in that movie. And Reed Franklin is the son. There's also a daughter too. I'm not sure if the daughter will debut, but Franklin is the big one. I'll have to wait and see on that. So yeah, like I mentioned before, Fantastic Four First Steps may show what happens when the universe ends, an incursion. And eventually the Fantastic Four may move over to Earth 616. And finally, in the Marvel portion of the news, Marvel wants the Avengers and X-Men to face off before the end of the multiverse saga. And they really want Wolverine and Hulk to have their fight scene moment in that movie. I can see this happening. Like, tonight as we record, D23 is happening later tonight. We may get a full slate, and I don't think Secret Wars is going to be the end. If it is the end, I think Secret Wars could be split into two movies. Secret Wars Part 1 and Secret Wars Part 2 may be X-Men versus the Marvel Universe, Avengers. Which would be an exciting end to this whole entire thing. And at the very end of that, we could have the very first conglomerate reboot of everything Marvel. But if we get that, it would be a geek's dream, especially for me. I mean, to see those characters fighting off each other, to see, and like I mentioned, if we saw Hugh Jackman Tony Stark and Tobey Maguire on the same screen together, it would be exciting. And I want to put that in the universe, and hopefully that would happen.
Yes.
Let's get into the rest of the regular news and out of the whole Marvel thing. Jack Black says Tenacious D will be back. He's still friends with Kyle Gass. They're just taking a little break right now. I kind of mentioned, I think I mentioned it to you, I mentioned to a friend of ours too, that the whole reason that they had to do this pivot was Jack Black was also, he's promoting movies, he's promoting stuff, so he kind of has to distance himself from all the shit that happened with Kyle Gass. It wasn't so Kyle Gass could have a little bit of stuff off of him. It was more for Jack Black has a huge career. He is the face of that group, who makes a ton of money in movies. He has that big movie that's going to be a box office bomb this weekend. However, he still has to promote it, so he can't really be doing that when something like this is dragging him down, Kyle Gass. So, I think that's the whole reason. There's kind of a little bit of a stop to them performing for now. But they will be coming back, I'm sure. Wolves, a movie coming out on Apple TV with Brad Pitt and George Clooney. I'm not sure when it comes out. However, the sequel has already been greenlit, so they must have a lot of high hopes at Apple for it.
Yeah.
Too big. Yeah. John Watch is directing it, writing, producing it. He's going to direct the sequel too. It's going to be an Apple TV original. So yeah, I'm kind of excited. I remember seeing the trailer; it looked pretty good. I don't know if you watched Different World in the 90s. That's the show, but they're going to be doing a sequel. They're doing a sequel series, on Netflix with the two characters. There's a spin-off of the Cosby Show, created by Bill Cosby, ran for 6 seasons on NBC. So yeah, this was shocking news. Ben Affleck to star as Hulk Hogan in a Gawker biopic, all about the stuff with him in the Gawker lawsuit. Including the Bubba the Love Sponge sex tape and everything, and how that tape was filmed and put on Gawker, and how Hulk Hogan sued them. Gawker went out of business. That was huge on the internet back in the day. Yeah. Went out of business. And then the news came out on TMZ a couple days ago that Hulk Hogan is pissed, and he's not afraid to lawyer up and sue for this. And the movie was officially announced by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's production company. Yep. Rumors are Ben Affleck will be playing him, but other than that, we don't know anything. And other than the lawsuit rumors coming out of that, we don't know anything either.
Is it based on a book? If it's based on a book, I don't think Hulk can sue them, technically.
It very well could be, and if that's the case, then yeah, he can't sue him. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think I mentioned it before. I really hope that Pauly Shore doesn't play Richard Simmons in a biopic now that he's dead. I saw that little clip of him as playing Richard. I don't think he does a great job of playing Richard Simmons. He looks like him a little bit, but he doesn't sound like him. He sounds like fucking Pauly Shore. There's no way to avoid that.
It's not like he's some sort of method actor that's going to instantly become, it's Pauly Shore, for fuck's sake.
He doesn't have the same energy that Richard had. Richard is so flamboyant. He was just such a force to be reckoned with. But I really hope that doesn't go in fruition. The family has pretty much denounced it too, clashing over this unauthorized biopic, saying that he never wanted Pauly to do it. He never got his approval, and they've been firing back at everything he's talking about. So, speaking of biopics, John Chu is doing a Britney Spears biopic. He's directed Wicked. The next movie he's going to be doing is this Britney Spears biopic called The Woman in Me, based off her memoir. So, yeah. She had a lot of fucked up shit going on in the early 2000s, right after she had her huge success. So, we'll have to wait and see. Lin-Manuel Miranda, of course, from Hamilton. His next project is a concept album for the Warriors movie that came out. Warriors, come out and play. Well, he's done a whole entire concept album coming out on October 18th. Hello, Kitty. Now we have a debut cat on our podcast. Aegon, the Conqueror.
Yes.
House of McCardle. But yeah, concept album, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Warriors, coming out on October 18th. He's done a whole entire album with songs for the Warriors. I had never seen that movie. You're saying it's great. I need to watch it, so I will be watching that soon.
There's a video game also.
Awesome. Awesome. Also, they're going to be doing a Stranger Things play. It was in England. They're going to be bringing it to Broadway in 2025, called The First Shadow. It's a spin-off rooted in the mythology of the TV show, written by some writers and producers of the show. The Duffer Brothers are based off an original story by them, and playwright who did Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is in charge of it. So,
nice.
Yeah. I know Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is pretty big on Broadway, so a lot of people love that. The Game of Thrones, remember right before the last season, season 2 of House of Dragon debuted, they put this big, huge, inflatable dragon on the top of the Empire State Building.
Yep.
Well, they're going to be turning it into limited edition tote bags, and I believe they already sold out. Maybe I can't remember, but limited edition. They're cutting it all up into these little tote bags, which is kind of stupid. Speaking of Game of Thrones, Kit Harington, he said that his spin-off was canned for wanting a story. He wanted a story worth doing, and they just couldn't get it right. Couldn't find the right story. I mean, they're talking about a sequel to Game of Thrones. How are you going to do that after you ended that? Especially with everybody kind of not liking it. Like,
yes,
they have to get it right. They have to get it right, and it's not a hard thing to do.
I mean, it took Dexter 10 years or whatever it took, so...
Right.
I mean, I think the right story will have to come around and then they can get going on it, but it might be years down the line, which I think would probably be best for everyone. Just let everything settle, let Game of Thrones do what they're doing now with their couple shows coming out, and hopefully in the future we see it.
Yep. He's also talked about he hasn't watched House of Dragon, but calls a prequel a more natural extension of the franchise than his Axe series would have been. A prequel is a natural thing. I think the prequels for this is actually working out well. It gives a little bit more of a backstory for the show. He's right about that. But talk a little bit about streaming. Hulu and Disney Plus and Hulu are raising the prices this fall again. Disney Plus with ads is going from $9.99, or is going to $9.99 from $7.99. Ad free is going to $15.99 from $13.99. The Duo Basic, which I have, is $9.99. Is going to be up to $10.99.
So
the premium is staying the same at $19.99. Well, without ads. Hulu with ads is going from $7.99 to $9.99, and Hulu with no ads goes from $17.99 to $18.99. So, ESPN Plus going up as well. Hulu Plus Live TV going up to $95.99 with no ads. Almost $100. That's more than fucking cable was when I quit cable.
Yeah.
A bundle of Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN goes up $2, going up to $26.99 if you want all three combined. I remember I had that when I first started. It was like $19.99 a month or something like that. But also, Disney Plus will begin password sharing crackdown in September. Netflix did it. Disney Plus is the next one to do it. They're very, very quick on that. They want their money. And I think they're going to get it because it's made the most profit for the first time since they've been around, just this last quarter alone. So Disney Plus, big huge streaming giant, especially with all the Marvel and Star Wars of it all. So also announced Venu, the pricing of that. This is the sports streaming platform backed by Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers. $42.99 a month. It's expected to debut in the fall, start of the NFL season. It's going to have ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, ESPN News, ABC, Fox, TBS, TNT, True TV, ESPN Plus content as well. So it's gonna have all of that stuff. You're gonna have a lot of local stuff. I know we have Nesson up here for baseball mostly, but we have a few things on there too. I think Bruins are played on there as well. So, but yeah, I mean, we're gonna be having a lot of that stuff. And they have all the other. They have like NFL Network, and they have all that other stuff too. NFL Sunday Ticket, whatever they have too. So, Paramount Plus going through a whole bunch of shit. Finally profitable, but the company announced a bunch of layoffs, billions of dollars in losses, laid off about 50% of its U.S. staffers this week. They're going to be merging with Skydance. We talked about that a while ago. About 2,000 employees. Also, they sold off comicbook.com, where I get a lot of my news for the podcast, and popculture.com. Sold them off to a private conglomerate. And Warner Brothers Discovery reported its second quarter 2024 earnings included $9.5 billion the devaluation of the company's TV networks, and an overall $11.2 billion hit to the company's balance. Oof, big, huge loss. I think it'd probably be better this quarter with Game of Thrones. I know that was a bit huge for them. A lot of people sign up for HBO, probably quit it right after, but David Zaslav Company reported the good news April 1st to June 30th period concluded with HBO's HBO Max and Discovery Plus boosting a total 103 million global subscribers, with an additional 3.6 million during that quarter. So streaming is a weird thing right now. It used to be great, cheap, affordable. Now it's becoming conglomerates of 3 or 4 different ones, and you're getting ads, and it's becoming cable again. We talked about it ad nauseum, but Boomerang cartoon streaming service is being shut down. They moving all the content to a library on Max. Also, the website for Cartoon Network is being shut down. A whole bunch of other ones. We'll have to wait and see. Warner Brothers Discovery reported that its game revenue suffered a major drop this quarter for the same period last year, largely due to Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, which was a failure for them. They're also looking to not just make their own games, but license out more games to other studios in the future as well. Nintendo Switch. It's about 1.1 million units away from surpassing the PlayStation 2 as the best-selling console of all time. I think, was it last episode we talked about the Switch being around almost as long as the original NES, something like that? I think we talked about that last time, but Game Informer magazine to shut down after 33 years. That was the official magazine of GameStop. That's going to be shut down after 33 years. I think they went digital, but they're going to be not making the physical copy of that anymore. Microsoft has shut down the Xbox 360 marketplace after almost 20 years. Came out in November 2005.
That's pretty
July.
crazy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So a lot of those games, if you had any add-ons or digital content, you can't have access to that anymore. So, yeah, rest in peace to Xbox 360 Marketplace, one of the first digital marketplaces around. Sony laid off 220 people at Bungie, accounting for 17% of the staff. All this talk about games now, how bad the world is economically. Fallout TV show increased gameplay for the game series by 5 times on Game Pass when that came out. So I kind of figured that was going to happen. I actually got the game too. I think it was free on maybe it was $4.99. I can't remember what I paid for it, but it was a good deal right when the show was airing. So Fallout was a good show. Netflix quietly canceled a lot of Zack Snyder stuff, including the Army of the Dead franchise plans. We kind of got into a little bit of that when we were talking about Rebel Moon, but I haven't watched that. I heard that both of those parts are good. I know you told me they're pretty good too.
I thought you watched Army of the Dead. You didn't?
I haven't watched either. No, I haven't watched either one of them. Yeah, I have to watch those. But yeah. Kate Blanchett says that no one got paid anything to do Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. She basically got free sandwiches and got to keep her elf ears. Back then, I imagine how much those movies made. Billions of dollars, especially after in DVD, Blu-ray, merchandising, everything. To hear something like that is kind of crazy, but it's the way it was back then. 20 years ago, 25 years ago. The deals were just not in place that they are now. Should have fought for more, though. I think they could have really done a number on that. But The Complete Unknown, the biopic of Bob Dylan, coming out on Christmas Day, December 24th, Christmas Eve. Trailer looked great, so I'm excited to see that. Here, the movie with Robert Zemeckis starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, coming out November 1st, 2 weeks earlier. Was supposed to come out Thanksgiving, come out the beginning of November now. Speaking of coming out early, the 90s show was supposed to come out in October. Now it's coming out in 2 weeks on October 22nd. The part 3 of that 8-episode spanning season. Kevin Smith is going to continue that turn that he had at the end of that series. The last episode of the last part of the season. That'd be cool. Shrieking Season 2 officially coming out October 16th. I can't wait for that.
Excellent.
Great show.
That's awesome.
Season 1 was fantastic. So
Yes.
St. Elmo's Fire sequel in very early stages of development, says Rob Lowe. It says they met with the studio to talk about that. Never saw the movie. It's on my list of things to watch sooner rather than later. Ever since I watched that Bratz documentary back a couple months ago. A TV series follow-up to John Wick films is currently in development at Lionsgate. Confirmed this week. No network streaming deal is concerned or is attached yet, but it'll pick up right where the last movie, Chapter 4, left off. Which, if you've seen that movie, John Wick died. Spoiler alert.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how that's going to continue. Ballerina is also another thing that's going to be up. They had the prequel series that didn't do well, The Continental.
Yeah.
Everybody said it was trash. I didn't even watch an episode of it because I heard it was trash. But
Yeah.
we'll see about that. Christopher Lloyd's going to be returning for Nobody 2. He
Nice.
played didn't he play the father of Bob Odenkirk in that? Yep.
Yep.
So I can't wait for that.
That's a great movie. I love that movie. Took you a while to see it, but you loved it too.
I never watched Squid Game. I don't know if you've. It's good. Season 2
very good.
has a premiere date coming out December 26th. They also announced that the third season will premiere in 2025. It'll be the final season. And they just started filming that, I believe, this week. It's going to end with that. So, of course, we talked about Saul from The Acolyte. He was the star of
Yes.
Squid Game, and he's going to be coming back for that. So, I'm actually want to get into that season 1. It was rumors that Eugene Levy and Dan Levy are in talks to host the 2024 Emmys, which I think happens next month in September. So I love Eugene Levy. I've seen Schitt's Creek. I don't know how much of you've seen of that or not, but he's great in that. Both of them are great.
I've heard it's amazing.
Great show. You should watch it. It's on Netflix, I believe.
Yeah.
The comedic timing between the two of them together is great, especially on the show. So exciting to see how that plays out on the ceremony like that. But we'll have to wait and see. Talking about this AI problem that's happening in Hollywood. We talk about the strikes that happened last year. The gaming industry is striking right now. The voice actor strike, trying to outlaw digital deepfakes, and the entertainment industry has united in support of a bill to outlaw digital deepfakes and create the first ever federal right to one's voice and likeness. I think this is a great step. It's being promoted by some senators, and it's going to be called the No Fakes Act, and make it illegal to create AI replica of someone without their consent. I think this is a great idea. We talked about how AI is scary, how they can really create without having the consent of somebody. I know we talked about James Earl Jones gave kind of Disney the consent to do Darth Vader well after he's gone. And use his voice, which is, it's iconic. You can't have Vader without his voice. So
Exactly.
was it Ahsoka that used his voice, but it wasn't actually James Earl that did the voice? I think it was Ahsoka that did that.
Yeah, they used AI.
They used AI. Yeah, they used AI, and it sounded great. And I'm sure there's safeguards in there that says you can't do anything derogatory, but you can play Vader from this point going forward using my voice. I'm sure they have to word that correctly in order for that to be done without being abused. So, the toys that made us. I know you talked about this to me before.
Yes.
Season 4 and 5 coming out soon. They're gonna be talking about superhero toys, Nerf, Pokemon. They talk about stuffed animals from the 80s and 90s, Hot Wheels, Ghostbusters action figures, Polly Pocket, and fast food toys.
Fast food toys will be good.
Yeah, that'll be good. And I gotta get it. I put that on there. I actually put it on the bottom of my notes of stuff I need to watch. I need to watch The Toys That Made Us. The Food That Made America 2, I need to watch that. I heard that was great as well. But The Toys That Made Us, and that's on Netflix, correct? I need to watch that. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were on the Fallon Tonight Show talking about the original people that were going to play Bad Boys were Dana Carvey and John Lovitz. Those are the...
What?
Imagine that movie, Kevin. Came out in 1995. Dana Carvey and John Lovitz starring in Bad Boys.
In an action movie.
In an action movie, yep. Especially after the shitty movies that they had prior to that and after that, especially. But that would have been strange. I think the right choice is Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. So.
Yes.
Roadhouse director Doug Liman slamming Amazon for not giving any back pay compensation to the streaming movie. It earned 80 million viewers that whole entire weekend, or that whole entire run. And we talked about it before, how they were pissed off because it didn't get the theatrical run that it should have. I even said it when I watched it. This movie would have done okay in the theater, even though it was kind of half-assed. It would have made them some money at least, but they didn't want to take the chance. Speaking of Dexter in the beginning of the show, they released some screen photos of Masuka and Angel, and I think they look almost identical to their Dexter characters, like these new actors playing them in this new iteration of Dexter coming out, the prequel series. Saw some very first pictures from Skeleton Crew coming out in December 3rd for Disney Plus, this new Star Wars original series, kind of like the Goonies in space. Jude Law is the main star, a whole bunch of kids, some aliens. Other than being the Goonies in space, that's all we really know about it. And James Gunn's Superman. They're going to have out this Superman box set collecting comics that inspired the DC movie. It's going to be a soft covers inside of a hard shell of 3 stories. They say 4 here. I don't know why, but All-Star Superman, Superman for All Seasons, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and Kingdom Come.
Well, that's 4 stories. So there you go.
It says 3 here on the top, and then they listed 4. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know which ones we're actually going to get, but But James Gunn also, finally in news, before we get into the D23, a little bit of the news that broke last night. James Gunn confirmed that filming is wrapped for Superman. So production has ended. That movie's coming out in less than a year. Excited for that. Everything we've seen behind the scenes looked great. I can't wait to see trailers and stuff coming out of that. So D23 started last night. Tonight, as we record, the Marvel panel, the big, huge Disney panel, is going to start at about 9 o'clock. Or 10 o'clock, end at midnight.
Can you stream that anywhere? Or is it just you go with it on Twitter?
You can stream it. It's not like Hall H where you can't stream it. I believe you can stream it. When they play trailers and stuff, they don't play them. But, yeah, I'm not really sure what we're going to be seeing. I know that we're probably going to be getting the full slate of Marvel, and that's going to be huge news. And we're probably going to get the full picture of what's going on with Marvel. Maybe even going past Secret Wars. If they do an X-Men versus Avengers game movie, I think it could be announced tonight, and it could be the end of everything, which would be cool. But D23 is happening right now. We saw some costumes from Skeleton Crew. They also talked about this new ride that was announced in 2019 coming to Avengers Campus in California. It's the Marvel Thanos ride. It's set in a futuristic world after Endgame if Thanos had won and he becomes the king. King Thanos. They showed a picture of him in cardboard form. Looked very menacing and cool. They also had a full time variance authority booth set up where you can actually walk through and see a whole bunch of artifacts from Marvel. A whole bunch of stuff. You actually have an interactive rocket that you can talk to, and he talks back to you with AI. Computer generated, looked very cool. I saw a video of that. You also saw Miss Minutes in the TVA. You see her on the screen as well, walking around. You also see some costumes from Agatha that comes out in a couple weeks. And you see all the cameo costumes from all the cameos in Deadpool and Wolverine, from Gambit, Blade, X-23, and Elektra. They're all on display there, the TVA thing there. You also see the very first kind of screen things from Daredevil Born Again with Kingpin and Daredevil as a graffiti art on a wall and a floor. Looks cool. That comes out in 6 months or so. But that's it for news. Like I said, the Marvel panel's happening tonight. We'll talk about it probably next week. Speaking of next week, Borderlands came out today. Debuted 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's about 7 right now, but not getting the best reviews, so we're not going to be watching that. Woman Tomorrow, either next week or the week after. Depends on if I can get through it by Friday. We're going to review that. It's going to be a first comic review we're going to do. Instigators on Apple TV. This is the Matt Damon, Casey Affleck movie. It's on Apple TV. It's like a buddy comedy. Set in Boston. Very thick Boston accents. I don't know if you've seen any trailers for this. Looks funny. But that's on Apple TV. And Umbrella Academy final season, hearing mixed reviews, came out yesterday. I'm going to be watching that. We're going to review that next week, talking about that. Then I'm going to get into the next big show. I don't know. I got The Witcher. I got Better Call Saul. I got Euphoria. The Toys That Made Us. I probably am going to watch that.
We were talking about Ron Perlman earlier. There's always Sons of Anarchy, fuckery personified.
I'm not sure if I want to get into that yet. We'll have to wait and see.
Something else. I just remember you love Ron Perlman, but yeah,
I do love him.
All good shows.
I do love him.
So.
Yep. Well, that's it for this week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for if you're watching on YouTube. If you watch this later on YouTube, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
And we will talk to everyone next week. Peace.
Bye.
Bye, Egon.
We're the Geek Blurb crew, here to enlighten you. Talking all things geeky, from movies to wrestling to our podcast is the place where you wanna be for all the latest news and nostalgia from the 80s and 90s. We review comic book flicks and sci-fi hits, riding the wave of action movies with all the cool bits. From Iron Man to Star Wars, we cover it all. And when it comes to wrestling, we never drop the ball. Geek Blurb, we're the kings of the nerds, rating movies and pineapples, our opinions never blurred. Join us each week for a geeky chat with the latest news and a dose of nostalgia that. So if you're a fan of the comic book craze, or a lover of sci-fi and all its maze, tune in to Geek Blurb, we're here to entertain, bringing you the best in geekdom, it's our domain.